Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Good morning. Happy Wednesday.
Yes, happy Wednesday to you. How
This
have you
really
been?
just tees me up for the great rest of the week. I look forward to
It
these
does me too.
these sessions. I'm doing well. What's
Yeah.
new and exciting?
We're taking a break next week for July 4th, so I'm going to be out of town. Looking forward to that. And otherwise, feeling like I just want to make sure my ducks are in a row before I leave. But good. Hot, but good. So, how about
Yeah,
you?
I think the whole country is hot.
Hot, but fine, hopefully. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Also looking forward to taking a break next week. I'm going to take a few days off myself and just be
Good.
lazy around the house. If I can
Mhm.
turn off my A personality long enough to not have a to-do list, but
We'll
we'll see.
see.
It'll be fun either way.
Good, good. Well, today's topic is a pretty good one. It's about user generated content. So I'm looking forward to a little bit of a discussion here and some tips that we've come up with. It's definitely this is a very interesting one depending on your product or service, how you approach it. But I'll do a quick definition. So before we roll
Yeah.
into tips, user generated content, sometimes it's called user created content, but UGC is probably the more common way. But it's something created by people that are not employees of your company and not paid vendors. And it's not a paid influencer either. So it's basically content that's created by someone who is a fan, a client or something like that, like not someone that money is going to. So, it could be video, a blog post, social media, product reviews, testimonials, written reviews, all that kind of stuff. So I think this will be an interesting one to think about, how this can work for you as a business, really
Yeah.
from the get go. Like, how does this become something that you do? So, you know, um, we're going to explore 3 tips today, how to create it, how to curate it, and then ultimately how to leverage it for your own growth. So, I'm looking forward to today's chat and, you
Yeah.
know, would love for you to just sort of kick us off with a tip that we can start with. So,
Yeah, excellent. I would love to. I think, I thank you for clarifying and
mhm,
defining
mhm.
UGC because I think a lot of times um, the first thought goes to that influencer,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And if you don't have the big pockets to pay
Yeah.
for that kind of brand advocate, you can really create your own brand advocates along the way, and it's not as difficult as you might think, and it doesn't take a
Mhm,
lot of money. It just takes some time and some planning. So I think the first thing that you need to do is really when you start to think about how can I motivate my followers or my customers to become brand advocates, is to
right.
really set up some guidelines for them,
Mhm, mhm,
and make it as fun as you possibly can
mhm,
for them to kind of get inspired to help you create this buzz. So um, having the guidelines and then thinking about, okay, how do I get this to become more of a viral thing? Setting up that unique hashtag
mhm,
that they can just use over and over again. You can repopulate it over and over again across all of your social platforms. It
mhm.
can take on legs of its own and really, grow. Um, and then you just kind of sit back and watch them create things. So I've got a couple of examples for you.
Okay.
So if you're a retail boutique
Mhm,
and there's a particular item that you're really trying to push in the market, you might want to put it out there to have your customers and your followers, you highlight a particular dress and say, where would you wear this?
mm, okay.
Right? have
Mhm.
them come up with scenarios where they can actually start to visualize where they would wear that,
Mhm.
and then it becomes something that other people see, "Oh, I've got this picnic coming up," or
Mhm.
"I've got this special event coming up," and that would be perfect and kind of, start to feed off of that. Or McDonald's, I think it was about, I wanna say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, they did this whole campaign on Snapchat, about people seeing themselves in the McDonald's uniform,
Right.
and they could actually put themselves into McDonald's uniform. So they
Mhm.
were visualizing themselves working there, and that was
Mhm.
highly successful for them.
Mhm.
Of course, they were trying to reach the 16 to 18-year-olds,
Right, right,
right?
right.
And it worked quite well for them.
Mhm.
And by the way, Snapchat is not dead. They have 422 million global followers
Wow. Yeah.
as of last month. So they are still, a force to be reckoned with and
Mhm.
use if you, especially if you're looking to reach the 15 to 25-year-olds. Think
Absolutely.
about
Yep.
that as a resource.
Mhm.
And then Netflix. I thought this was really cool. Season 2 of Stranger Things,
Mhm.
they invited their followers um, to create their own themed content, to create art around it, to share experiences around it,
Mhm.
and it just exploded
Yeah.
in, a viral buzz. So there are ways to, obviously, help them kind of spur their creativity, the followers and the clients,
Right.
to really get them to add their own dimensions to it.
Mhm.
And I think that's so fun. And then along the way, you are going to be nurturing them,
Mhm.
making sure that you do the likes and that you repost and that you share, what they're doing, and really highlight them on your website,
Mhm.
get them to feel extra special for
Yeah.
participating in this event. And then the next time you want, to do something else with them, they'll be much more eager to join in on the fun,
Yeah.
and they can also create some ideas for you as well along the way.
Yeah. It's definitely a moment where you need more activity, more focus on your own socials when you're running these efforts. You definitely have to pay a little more attention to the responsiveness. I agree. Makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I think in terms of homework for this, if you could just maybe brainstorm one type of campaign that
Mhm.
you'd want to get started on, and hopefully maybe these examples gave you some ideas. Create that hashtag, that unique hashtag,
Mhm.
and then put it out there on one platform and just give it a try,
Mhm.
and see what happens, and see if you can get at least a few people to start,
Mhm.
sharing some content with you.
Yeah. And I think that this is a moment where, depending on your audience that you currently have, you can certainly boost and promote those posts, right? Because
Absolutely.
you're not buying the content per se. What you're doing is promoting the idea of what's going on. Because if you have a small group of people, you may, maybe have a really, little trickle of activity, but you can kind of support that. And another thing you sort of made me think of is, you talked about where would you wear this dress or where could you do it. You can also sort of I've seen a lot of this where I've been like, if you ever see a post and you're like, that's not true, or I could totally do that. Like if you have that mentality, I believe it's usually quite intentional. Like for example, um, I'm showing a dress and I'm like, they told me I should not wear this to, my brother told me I should not wear this to the picnic. What happens is that people are like, oh, you could totally, like, or you can dress it up with what, like, you can sort of start to feed things too with a sort of a negative or a challenge kind of post. So that's
Yes,
another way
yes,
to
that's
sort of feed into it too.
that's definitely another way of doing it. Have them
Mhm.
support
Yes.
your point of view,
Yeah.
right?
Because
Yeah,
people
yeah.
like to do that, right? They're like,
They
like to
do.
rally upon a thing or a cause or something
Especially if
like
you
that. So
feel like you're, not being bullied per se,
yes,
but, that you need some assistance to feel better about a certain
right,
thing.
right.
Yes.
Yep. So yeah,
Yeah,
very
that's
nice.
true.
Cool. So
So for you, what were you thinking of for tip number 2?
so it's kind of common to some of my themes probably as I was looking a little bit about the process of how this becomes part of something you do ongoing. And some of this is uh, for B2B as well. Like for me, I think of that first and then I start to think of a different, consumer approach. But for B2B, let's just say testimonials and stories of successes are one of the most powerful things we can use in the business to promote, to share, for sales, for all these other things. So, when a customer gives you a testimonial or writes a good review for you, that is user generated content as well. That falls into that category. So, for me, the process of how that becomes part of what we do and how we share it is very important. So, for example, let's say we have a client, whatever it looks like for the ramp up where somebody is, the first month we do this and by month 3 we kind of expect this. And there's always this sort of ebb and flow, especially early stages where clients super excited, little frustrated, super happy, like there's this like thing because it's a little bit of work to get everything organized up front. But
Yeah.
I usually set a point where I want to get the testimonial, I want to interview them. So these are things that are generated, but I am sort of feeding them to them in a
Yes.
process. I have tools, and I've been recommended some tools too, but Riverside.fm is nice because I can do a quick recording of asking you how's it going, what do you think, and some key questions about how do you feel about things, and it will isolate the video of us. So you don't see me at all. You just see the
Ah,
person I'm talking to. I can pull out a quick testimonial that I can export into something else. So sometimes there's tools, and I'll post that one in there too. That's a real good one. But when I'm done with a conversation or a video, it's giving me individual videos that I can use for my own reasons. And if there's multiple people on the call, I can ask them both a question. I'm going to get individual testimonials that I can use.
that's awesome. I
So
just wrote that down.
yeah, I'll
I
pop
think
it in
I've
the
heard
chat
about it
too.
once, but I have not explored it. So that's good to know.
Yeah, I'll put that in there. I probably talked about it. I don't. I sort of off and on. It's a month to month, so sometimes I'll. It's not. It's super inexpensive, but you know how all those subscriptions start to
I know.
stress
It's
me
like,
out. So
did I pay for
um,
that for the year? Am I on a month to month?
it's just too much. It used to be. I'm old, so I remember getting the discs that you bought something,
Oh,
and
yes.
now everything's subscription. So that's having the process for how you get stuff is really important to me, but also setting control over, if I'm looking for, um, like for marketing, it is good for me to see like what challenges are people seeing. So anything time I can get someone to engage with a post or share a conversation about what they're experiencing, I like to look for opportunities to use that and say, client was, it's a little different, but client was having this problem and let's talk about it. So using it for other things. And I think when you're asking for whether it's, can this dress be worn at a picnic and how would you dress it up? Or, tell me about how did you figure out your buyer persona process for your company? Like whatever it is, set the guidelines for what's acceptable. Sorry. And then, choose, the experiences, the backgrounds, and then just really make sure it aligns with your brand, whatever you do with it. So
Yeah. That's a good point. I think, I just thought of something as you were talking with the testimonials. I think it's, yes, you lead that conversation, with that client. And definitely, I would encourage anybody to do that early on in your relationship with them. And then also maybe, if you're doing project work, then at the end as well. but I think that touch point, that conversation early on, to get some idea of the onboarding process and how they're finding the experience in the early stages is better. Um, and I think that oh shoot, I lost my train of thought for a second. Um, oh, with the testimonials, you want to be free enough in your thinking that they don't all sound the same at the end, right? So you're trying to pinpoint different problems that you solved, or different, so that it's not always, well, okay, I do marketing for companies, so I could set it up and I could probably run a story exactly the same way, and it becomes almost of a template. You don't want it to look or sound or be
Yeah.
a template. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I think just being aware of how this is going to be different. Maybe the problem was slightly different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that you were addressing or whatever. So just try to be aware so that it doesn't always sound the same.
Right. And I try to ask feeling questions when I'm looking for
Mm,
some things, because whenever, if it's on video or whatever, I've got a video, but it also can be written down, like, transcribed and things like that into little sound bites. But when I ask feeling questions, like, how did you feel about, that once you understood exactly who you were talking to and your marketing, like, how did you feel when you had these guidelines set and it was clear the path you were taking? Like, by
yeah,
asking that, you tend to get much, deeper questions, and people don't always expect that. But the
that's
truth
true.
is, everything we do, even if we're starting a business, I mean, there's a feeling behind that. It's like, future security for your family, and like, there's just things that are part of it, right? That we work for different reasons.
Yeah,
And it's not to make the best marketing campaign that's sort of connected to it, but it's something a little deeper. So the more you can get to that, I think
absolutely.
it's nice to have those pieces.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I think
That's a
that's
really
part
good
of it
point.
too, is really about, sort of the process. How do you make the most out of what you get? Saying that, as we start clients or projects, there's a point, and you can even put it in your timeline up front. I'm going to do a check-in. It'll be a video check-in to see how you're doing. I want, your permission. Do it up front. Like, I'd like to get your permission up front to use this and share this, and, tell them why you do it. But make sure your questions and the conversations are connected to what's important to you, um, what you need to share. And then I'll just say another thing is that, diversity is crucial. So, diversity of people, um, industries, problems, all those types of things. You really want to show a story that people can see themselves in. So, make sure
Yes.
you pay attention to how you're broadening that, job titles, ages, like, because I work sometimes with a director and sometimes there's an intern. It's good to see the perspective of both, especially if you can find value there. So, once you have those things, you can put them on your website, you can share them on social, you can reference them in an email. There's all these things you can use. So make them part of the process that you're talking about as part of your own marketing. So this is
Mhm.
what we do. We collect this information, and this is how we use it ongoing. So I would say,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
homework for this section is, let's look for, any kind of three things. Like, you look at something that maybe somebody might have said about your brand, whether it's a testimonial, Google review, or comment in a post, or even a comment to you, and think about, how could you use that? How could you have captured it? How, especially if you're early on, you don't have that yet, but look for things that people said that it wasn't you. You'll find ideas there to get more, and then also how to use it. So, um, you know, and then also start thinking about, how do you share what someone said. You can start with, especially on LinkedIn, I was talking to a client and they said this. It made me
Mhm.
think, and this, it affected our whatever. So start thinking about that tone.
Yeah.
how you communicate. So
Yeah, definitely.
cool.
What about to that point where people are just starting out? Maybe they don't
Hmm.
have any customers, at the
Hmm.
current time. How do they go about getting started with some user generated content? What have you
Yeah.
recommended for your clients?
I think that's where you start looking at colleagues and professional friends who are, supportive. I've always found that to be quite easy to find. Is you go to a network event, you are part of a community, you connect with someone who's like-minded. You both, even if you're like in marketing for me, like there's a ton of competitors, but there's a lot of business out there. Like I don't compete with every marketing agency. I mean, you might, but the truth is you probably get more if you start to think more collaboratively and look at what your niche is. So even, start to look for professional connections somehow, because everybody's got their thing, and especially you with like some of the HR stuff and things like that, you're always talking to somebody about what they might do, even if they're not a client. Because
Mm-hmm.
people are at different stages
Yeah.
where they're not a good fit or they can't afford you or whatever it is. That is a person, before you give them all this free information, tell them you want this. You want something from them. And, so
Yeah.
just ask it for it in those conversations. But I find that at first, find some professional people. It's the same person that you want to say, hey, I'm going to post and tag you on LinkedIn. I want you to respond and share. I'll do the same for you. Just let me know. Like mutual,
Yeah.
pay it forward kind of stuff.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
Create that reciprocity,
Right.
right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
So, what about you? Tip number 3, bring us home.
Well, tip number 3 is not really as much of an action item, but
Okay.
it's just more of a consideration of why user-generated content, is so beneficial
Okay.
for companies,
Hmm.
and I think the things that you need to consider when thinking about how do I get on this bandwagon
Hmm.
is, it really does help to improve the brand awareness,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
It's if you are engaging and your content is engaging, it is just going to be ripe for social sharing, which is only going to help your brand awareness. And then it also does increase engagement.
Hmm.
People are feeling heard.
Hmm.
You are looked at as authentic,
Hmm.
in how you're positioning your brand and, working with or interacting with your followers and your customers. So
Right.
it really helps you get noticed more easily in
Hmm.
that regard because you're coming across as really authentic and unique. And to your point, you're not competing with everybody out there
Yeah.
for business, but you've got to be uniquely positioned for your audience to
Hmm.
really be gravitating towards you.
Yeah.
And social proof, we all need that, right? So
Hmm.
those testimonials, those videos of clients just saying what it was like to work for you, that's social proof that goes a long way if somebody doesn't know you, to
Right.
feel a little bit more comfortable, making that or taking that call to action, whether it's
Hmm.
a phone call or scheduling that appointment to talk to you. So and then I think it's very cost effective, right?
Hmm.
Because it doesn't really take a lot of
Sure.
money. You can put money behind it, to your point earlier, but you can also just invest the time. Time is
Hmm.
money, yes,
Yeah.
but we have a little bit more of that when we're starting up than
Hmm.
we do money necessarily.
Right.
So
Right.
really take a look at how it helps you grow organically,
Hmm.
right? And then the customer insights that you can gain from it. And that's
Oh, for
probably
sure.
one of the
Hmm.
things that I love the most about user generated
Yeah.
content is it really lets you know what they like
Hmm.
about your brand
Hmm.
and, you know, areas where you can improve,
Yeah.
right? Either
Hmm.
the quality of the product, the output of the solution that you're providing, whatever it is, right?
Right. Right.
And those are things that, my goodness, if you had to pay for a market research
Oh yeah.
report,
Yeah. I used to
be
tell
looking at
people that like negative
$15,000.
reviews they feel bad. I know when you look at Google, but people used to pay for this information. So
Right.
unfortunately, it's scary for a lot of people, but it is something that if you know you can if you're in tune with it, you can address and adapt and things like that. So
Yeah.
100%. So
Yeah. And if it's negative stuff, try to remove your personal self
hmm
from the picture
yeah.
and look at it as if it's not your business, but it's somebody else's business.
hmm
And then how would you solve that problem for them,
Yes.
right? Or what changes would you make rather than to take the negative personally
Yeah.
and
And
like a personal attack.
I would even say, like, I just be as upfront and transparent with your response to it as possible because you need to respond. I mean, to be honest, there is a level of distrust if you have all 5 stars, to be honest. So,
Mhm.
just use it as an opportunity, even though it's super scary.
And
But
everybody knows nobody's perfect. Everybody has a bad day now and then or
mhm,
whatever it is,
it's how you
maybe.
respond and how you
Yes.
rise up against that or to it. So, I mean, I really think our tip, like for this one, is just find one thing because once you have
Yeah.
one, you will find it much easier to build the rest. So you really, I mean, there are people who I've been long term, like people who will I've helped with stuff and I say, hey, I need a quote from you, or I need something from you, and they always are happy to do it because they know that it was just free information that I gave them. So it was
Yes.
just, and the same is true. People have helped me with things. And if they've asked me for stuff, I wouldn't hesitate. Like if you help me set up, like thinking of next week or 2 weeks, but my Google Analytics just give me some tips. Absolutely. I'm going to publicly thank you. You might have to remind me, but,
Yeah.
of course I would, if I genuinely, got some value from it. So.
I think that's an interesting point as well, is that if you do ask somebody,
Mhm.
"Hey, would you mind, writing me 2,
Yeah.
3 sentences as a
Mhm.
testimonial
Yeah.
or just speak to what you have observed is my competency,"
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
And then if they don't respond, right away or within a few days or even within a week, if you
Mhm.
haven't really given them a deadline for it,
Yeah.
um, definitely reach back out to them.
Mhm.
People get busy.
Yeah.
Things come up, all of a
Yeah.
sudden the kid is sick or
Mhm.
they've had the flu or whatever and you
Yeah.
don't know what's going on. Don't be afraid to reach back out and
Yeah.
say, "Hey, I know it's crazy, but is there any way that you could get this to me?" And
Mhm.
then give them a date by
Yeah.
which, to give it to you.
And also give them a 2 sentences example, something like
Yeah.
this, because I've a million times over that has been the key because people don't know where to
Yes.
start, right?
Yes.
If a blank page for a lot of people is just like, whoa, but give them 2 sentences, something like this, or if you like this, I'll use this, or they can make a tiny edit. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. That is like often the way we approach those two. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
time,
So,
nobody,
be kind, but,
yeah.
be persistent. It's
Mhm.
okay.
Yes.
If
Especially if
you
it's a
know them well
colleague
enough to,
slash friend, like say, you remember
yeah.
when I took 30 minutes and did this for you? Give me those 5 back. So
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And, if they know you well enough that you're asking for
mhm.
that testimonial,
Yep,
then they could do it very quickly.
one 100%.
It's just really getting them to kind of focus in on it for a
Yeah,
moment for you. Yeah.
very good. Well,
Excellent.
we're taking off next week for July 4th, and then we'll be back with some exciting analytics stuff on July 10th. So I'm really looking forward. We'll have a special guest for that. I'm looking forward to that. So
Yeah, that's going to be so much fun. Tune in then. In the meantime, have a great week next week
yes,
and a good
safe
holiday to
travels, whatever
everybody.
you're doing. Yes.
Yeah, have
Okay.
fun.
See you later.
Okay. Bye.